Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here with Stephany Laverty. She is a policy analyst at the Canada West Foundation. Stephany, we're talking a little bit about this project you did on youth talent and attraction and attitudes. I'd love to know, did you do any research on generally how young people think about their futures and their places in society? Is that part of what you did?
So we really looked at, as I mentioned, kind of the life stages and how
Right.
that influences their decisions. And then we also looked at how they understand the world. So where do they get their information from?
Mhm.
So social media was definitely the major one, friends and family. So that really helped them determine where they kind of sit. They didn't really pay as much attention to kind of local news, international news. That wasn't as much of a factor in kind of what influenced their opinion and how they saw themselves. There was also a strong um, kind of the influence of perceptions of youth, how they perceive each other, how they perceive places, how they perceive sectors, really influences how they choose where they go and what they do.
Right. So do they see themselves more as part of a global youth movement, or do they see themselves more as part of their town or their village or their city locally?
Yeah, so we asked kind of how do you identify? Do you identify with your city? Do you identify as Canadian? Do you identify with your province? For those within Alberta, it was those within Calgary and Edmonton tended to identify with their city or the as a Canadian more, so as a Calgarian or Canadian. And then those kind of in the rural areas were more likely to identify with their province or as a Canadian than with their kind of municipality. In Vancouver, we also surveyed Vancouver and Toronto youth. That city identity was again very strong,
Right.
and then less with the province, and then Canadian was stronger than the provincial identity in kind of the urban areas.
Indeed. I'd love to know, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, how this connects with our immigration strategies as a country, or even in your province. Have you given any thought to that at all?
Yeah, so we've been looking at what's kind of happening with immigration, and StatsCan actually released the latest quarterly numbers at the end of September. So between Q1 and Q2 this year, Canada actually had its largest increase in immigration uh, since it was the fastest population growth since 1957, and the largest growth between quarters since immigration has been recorded.
Right.
So we are definitely seeing an uptick in immigration. We also know diversity of immigration is also increasing. So, ethnic background, religious background, that's also more diverse than it historically was.
So, are we on the right track with our immigration strategies in your estimation?
So I think it depends on what the ultimate goal is. If we're trying to bring in more workers to fill the workforce and we're just looking at it from a quantity basis, I think we are increasing. But if we're looking for workers to fill specific gaps in the labor market, say healthcare or other areas, we need to do a better job of credentialing and credential recognition. There's been a few changes in that sphere that we've seen very recently. So Ontario has mentioned it's going to be eliminating its Canadian experience requirements. Um, that's one approach. And then Alberta, the College of Physicians and Surgeons, for specific countries, they're actually going to reduce part of the certification process within the province. So it takes less time for them to actually get certified to work within the province. But that credential recognition and credentialing and having kind of a common
Right.
language of credential and competency across nations is still very, very much in the early stages.
Right. But it seems to be going in the right direction, do you think?
I think so. I think we're getting there, and I think we're having those discussions more so than we did in the past.
Right, right. We will continue our discussion here with Stephany Laverty. She is a policy analyst at Canada West Foundation as we sort of unlock the puzzle, or at least discuss the puzzle of youth talent attraction, which is a challenge not only for Canada, but for the rest of the world as well. Please stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages.